Good morning. I'm going to start doing my pre-trip air brake inspection. So the first thing I'm going to do is chock my wheels. So I'm going to open the door. I'm going to open this compartment where I have my wheel chocks. I'm going to close the door and I'm going to chock the wheels, leaving a little part outside on both the back and the front. Okay, now I'm going to go inside the truck. Now I'm going to start my pre-trip air brake inspection. My first test is going to be my governor and compressor check. So first I have to chock my wheels, take off my brakes, and turn my engine on. I'm going to charge my system to its maximum capacity, which is 130, but this truck only goes to 115. So I'm going to watch my primary gauge and make sure it goes to the maximum. Once it's filled to the maximum capacity, the first thing I'm going to do is press on my service brake. I see I have about 107 psi, so I'm going to accelerate and look at my primary gauge. I notice nothing happens, it doesn't move. So what I do now is press on my service brake again. Now I have approximately 100 psi. Again, I'm going to accelerate. Okay, right away I noticed that the gauge started to move. That means 100 psi is my cut-in, but it can be at a minimum or no lower than 85. So I'm going to keep accelerating to see where it stops. Okay. My gauge stops at 115. That means 115 is my cutout. So with this, I prove that my governor and compressor are working correctly. Now I'm going to move on to my next test, which is my applied brakes test. To do this one, I'm going to chock my wheels, take off my brakes, turn off the engine. I'm going to push on my service brake pedal to a pressure of about 40 psi. I see that in my primary gauge I have approximately 107 psi, and I'm going to hold it for 1 minute. In that 1 minute, I should not lose more than 4 psi. So I'm going to hold it steady, holding my pedal steady. I'm going to listen inside and outside for any air leaks. So I'm just waiting 1 minute. I'm still checking, listening, waiting for the minute to pass, looking at my gauge also, making sure it's not moving. Okay, 1 minute has passed. I still have 107. I didn't hear anything. That means there are no air leaks in my system. Now I'm going to do my third test, which is my low air warning check. To do this one, I have to chock my wheels, take my brakes off, turn off the engine, but I'm going to open my switch. I'm going to bring down the pressure using my service brake pedal. When the gate in between 55 and 75, a red light or buzzer should come on. So I'm going to start pushing my service brake pedal. Okay. At 60 psi, a red light and the buzzer came on, which means my lower warning system is working properly. Now I'm going to move to my last test, my parking brake check. I'm going to apply my parking brakes, put them on, turn on my engine, gonna get off and remove my chocks. The first thing I'm going to do is fasten my seatbelt when I get back in the truck. I'm going to fill my tank, my air tanks, to a minimum of 100 psi. Looking at my gauge, making sure it's filling up. Once I have a minimum of 100, I'm going to put my truck in a low gear. And I'm going to try to move forward slowly. Okay, the truck did not move. That means my parking brakes are working properly. And with this, I conclude my in-cab pre-trip inspection for the air brakes. Now I'm going to move on to the in-cab inspection. So to do the in-cab inspection, I'm going to start off with my passenger side mirrors. Make sure they're clean, well mounted to the door, that they're giving me all good views of the side of my truck, clean, not broken or cracked. I'm going to check the windows on the passenger side, make sure they're working properly. Then I'm going to jump to my windshield. The windshield has to be clean, no cracks. Make sure that it has a good seal, no illegal stickers around it. Then I'm going to check my visors. Make sure they work properly, because sometimes you need them to give you a little blocking from the sun. Then I'm going to move on to my defroster. The defroster I will turn on and make sure that it's working properly, so that if I need it, it's working, because you can't drive without it. Then I'm going to check my wipers. I'm going to check both my passenger and driver's side wipers. Make sure they're working properly. My valves for my parking brakes, make sure they're working properly, no air leaks. They should be very tight. I'm going to check the lock for the fifth wheel slide, make sure it's in the lock position. My interaxle differential, make sure it's in the unlock position, only to use when I need it. My cruise control switches are off because I'm not driving right now. I'm going to check my primary and secondary air gauges, make sure they're filling up properly and that they're working correctly. My fuel gauge, that it's working properly, marking correctly, as well as my voltage meter, make sure it's marking at 13.6 or no higher than 14. I'm going to check my speedometer, make sure it works correctly. My tachometer, by accelerating a little, I notice it's working properly. Make sure that my oil pressure is no higher than 50 or no more than 75, because that could be dangerous. I'm going to check my water temperature. If it goes anywhere near 200, it can be dangerous. Make sure it's always around 150 or 100. Then I'm going to check my steering wheel. This steering wheel, since it's a 20-inch steering wheel, should have no more than 2 inches of play, because that could be dangerous, or I would have to adjust it. I'm going to check my electric horn, my air horn. I'm going to check my trolley brake, make sure it's in the up position, because if I pull it down, it could lock the trailer brakes. I'm going to check my signals, my left signal, my right signal, my emergency lights, make sure that they're all working correctly. I'm going to check my accelerator pedal, my brake pedal, and my clutch pedal. This clutch pedal should have no more than 2 inches of play. I'm going to check my shifter knob. The shifter should have its boot well covered so that nothing comes in from the outside, no gases or anything like that. Make sure this is tight and well mounted. I'm going to check my seat belt, make sure it has no rips or tears, that it's in good condition and locks properly so it doesn't come loose. That my seat works, goes up and down, front and back if I need it to. Then I'm going to check in the cab. I'm going to check that in my cab there's nothing that can fall forward or obstruct my driving. So I have to make sure it's always clean up, that there's nothing that can fall, such as bottles or anything really. Then I'm gonna check my side door. I'm gonna check that my window goes up and down, that they're clean, not broken, that my door opens and closes with a good seal around it. And I'm gonna end with my mirrors. Make sure they're clean, not broken, and giving me good visibility of my trailer and the back. Now I'm going to start my pre-trip inspection. First I'm going to start off making sure the truck is on level ground, making sure there are no excessive fluid leaks on the floor. I'm going to check on both sides of my truck to make sure that there's nothing obstructing the movement of the truck, such as wires, trees, branches, hydrants, cars or children or people. Make sure that it's on level ground. That's going to make sure that I don't have any flat tires, that there's nothing wrong with the suspension, or that my load is improperly balanced. I'm going to check the top of the truck. I'm going to check the wind deflector, make sure it's in good condition, well mounted to the top of the truck. I'm going to check my 5 indicator lights, make sure they're working, they're clean and not broken. I can see the top of the horn, make sure it's clean, that there's nothing obstructing the airflow coming out. Then I'm going to start getting closer. I'm going to get closer. Now I'm going to check my visor. I'm going to check the visor, make sure it's in good condition. Make sure it's well mounted with all the bolts on the top. I'm going to check my windshield. The windshield should be in good condition, not broken or cracked, clean. Make sure it has a good seal around it so no water or air goes in through the front. I'm going to check both my windshield wipers, make sure they're in working order with a good amount of tension. Check their water hoses are in good condition, as well as the rubbers on the top. In here I'm going to check my coolant level. I can check the coolant level in here, make sure it's full. When it's cold I can check it, make sure it's always full. I'm going to check the radiator grill. The radiator grill should be clean, in good condition, not broken or damaged, with a good airflow going inside to the radiator. In this box I can check my oil level right here, and if I need to add, I can add through here also. So I'm always going to check the oil level right here. I'm going to check the lights and signal lights. I'm going to check that they're clean, not broken or cracked. Make sure they're well mounted to the truck, and my high beams and low beams are in good working order. I'm going to check the front bumper, make sure it's not damaged or bent in any direction so it doesn't bother the tires from moving from side to side. I'm going to check the fog lights, make sure they're clean, working good, make sure they're well mounted also. The license plate should match the paperwork I have inside the truck. I'm going to move over here to the driver's side. On the driver's side of the truck, the first thing I'm going to check for is my steering box. I'm going to check the steering box, make sure it's in good condition, make sure it's not leaking anything because it has hoses connected, so no fluid should be leaking from there. Make sure it's well mounted to the frame of the truck. I'm going to check my pitman arm. The pitman arm should also be in good condition, not bent or damaged. It should be in good condition with all the locks and lug nuts that it needs. Make sure this lock is connected well to the drag link. The drag link should also be in good condition, shouldn't have any wear, because this is where my tires turn. Here I can see my power steering deposit. This is where I add my power steering fluid if I need to, and I can check it through here also. Since it has a hose, I'm going to make sure it's not leaking and make sure it's well connected. Make sure I'm also going to check my shock absorbers. The shock absorbers should be in good condition, not leaking any hydraulic fluid, well mounted to the frame. I can see my spring mounts right here. I can also see the leaf springs. The spring mounts well connected to the frame. The leaf springs in good condition overall, not damaged or broken. I can see the U-bolts on the inside of the truck, well mounted to the front axle. Make sure it's in good condition. Here I can see an air hose. This air hose is connected to the brake chamber in the front. The front brake chamber is a single brake chamber and should have no more than 1 inch of play on the push rod. I'm also going to check my brake drums inside the tires and the brake pads, which should have a minimum of 1/4 inch of life. From there, I'm going to move on to the passenger side. On the passenger side, I'm going to check the overall condition of the side of the truck. I'm going to start off by checking the mirrors are well mounted to the door. Make sure they're all clean and not broken. That the door opens and closes properly with a good seal around it. Going to check the handle and the steps for the truck. So the passenger can get in and out very smoothly. Make sure that all the glass and windows are clean and not broken. Then I'm going to start checking the inside of the truck or the engine compartment. Since I'm not going to lift the cab, I'm going to check from here. I'm going to start checking, first of all, the fan. I'm going to check the fan, my radiator, and I cannot see them. I can only probably see one, but I know that there's 4 belts in there, which are my alternator, compressor, water pump, and power steering belts. These pumps should have no more than 3/4 of an inch of play towards the center, should be in good condition, and should be all not dried or cracked. Very good. Then I'm going to check the exhaust. I can see the turbo right here. I can see the exhaust system, make sure it's not leaking and that it's not broken or damaged. Again, I'm going to check my shock absorber, make sure it's well mounted to the frame, not leaking any fluid. I can see right here the air hose for the front brake chamber, which is a single. Again, should have no more than 1 inch of play on the push rod. I can see the spring mounts, make sure they're well mounted to the frame, that the leaf springs are in good condition, the U-bolts. Again, the brake drum on the inside of the tire and the brake pads, which have to have a minimum of 1/4 of an inch of life. Then I'm going to check this front tire. This front tire should have a minimum of 4/32 of thread on the drivers on these 2 steering tires. The front tires have to be original twin tires. On the side of the tires there should be no cuts or damage. They should have a good amount of air, which is 100 or whatever the manufacturer says. Also, they should be well mounted to the rim of the truck. The rim should be in good condition, not damaged or broken. Make sure I have all the lug nuts, that they're on good condition, no rust, because that could indicate that they're loose. Gonna check my hub oil seal cap. This is where I can add grease or oil to the front axles if I need to. Then I'm gonna move to the back. I'm gonna start off by checking the steps on the side of the truck. These steps have to be well mounted to the base that holds the tank to the frame. Make sure that they're tight so I can get up and down from here. Make sure that the diesel tank is in good condition, is not broken or damaged or leaking any diesel. Make sure it has a good cap that can open and close properly with a good seal inside. There should be no illegal weldings on this diesel tank, and this tank should never be filled to more than 95% of its capacity. I'm also going to make sure it's well mounted to the frame of the truck, that the frame itself is in good condition with no illegal weldings of any kind. Make sure. I'm also going to check this catwalk. The catwalk should be in good condition so that anybody can get on top safely, well mounted to the frame. I'm going to check my battery box. Inside the battery box, I know for a fact there are 3 batteries. These 3 batteries should be well mounted to the inside, should be strapped down, and should all have their terminals clean, and should have caps on top so that they're not making any contact with any other metal that could cause a short. I'm going to check that it's well covered on the top with its box. I'm also going to check these lines. These 3 lines are very important. I'm going to check my service line, which is the blue one, the emergency line, which is the red one, and the electrical line, which is the black one. They have to be well connected on both sides, the trailer side and the tractor side. Make sure that they're well connected, and they should never be hanging too low. They should have always a good amount of slack. I'm going to check right here. This is the drive shaft. Make sure the drive shaft is in good condition, connected from the transmission to the differential. Make sure it's in good condition. From there, I'm going to start again on the back, now my back axles or my driving axles. I'm going to check these spring mounts. They're a little bigger for these back tires because these hold more weight. Make sure that the leaf springs are also in good condition. Right here I can see a single brake chamber. This single brake chamber has its air hose. It shouldn't be leaking any air, and this one should also have no more than 1 inch of play on the push rod. And if it did happen to have more play, I can always adjust it. I'm going to come over to this middle part. Right here I can see the 5th wheel. This 5th wheel and the apron of the trailer, in between there should be no light. I should not be able to see through to the other side between this part. And if I could, that could mean that it's not coupled correctly or that there's something wrong. So I'm always going to check that. Make sure it has a good amount of grease also. I'm going to check the fifth wheel base. Make sure that the lock for the fifth wheel slide is inside so it doesn't slide through these teeth. And then make sure also that it has all the teeth so that it doesn't, so it can move forward and back properly. I'm going to check that the fifth wheel itself is well mounted to the frame of the truck. I can see here a shock absorber. This shock absorber should have no leaks because it does have fluid inside. I can see here an airbag. This airbag should also have no leaks or tears because it's an airbag and it's very delicate. I'm going to check this spring mount again. This spring mount also well connected to the frame of the truck. Make sure it has all its leaf springs and that the leaf springs are not broken or damaged. Here I can see a double brake chamber. This double brake chamber should have no more than 2 inches of play on the push rod, and if it did, I can always adjust it. I can see the hoses that it's connected to and make sure that they're not leaking any air. Then I'm going to start in between these tires. In between the tires, there should be a good amount of space. There should be a good amount of space so that they're not touching each other. Make sure these tires have a good amount of air, which is also 100 or 95 psi or whatever the manufacturer indicates. The tread on these tires has to be a minimum of 232 on the tread depth. Make sure it has at least that. Make sure again that there are no cuts or damage on the side of the tires, on either side of these tires. Make sure they both have all their lug nuts and that they don't have any sign of rust because that could indicate that they're loose. These have covers right here for the differential on both of them because if I need to check the fluid, I do it through the middle in the differential area. Then I'm going to come here, check my mud flaps. My mud flaps should be in good condition, well mounted, should have all the bolts. The mud flap should be no more than 4 inches off the ground and should be in good condition with no rips or tears. Now I'm going to come over here to the center of the truck. In the center of the truck, I can see the kingpin for the trailer. I can see the kingpin and I can see these two things which are called the locking jaws. These locking jaws should be well around the kingpin to make sure that it doesn't move or disconnect from the truck and the trailer. So these are the things that are coupling the kingpin. Make sure they're in good condition. Make sure that the fifth wheel is in overall good condition. I can see here the air hoses for the brake chambers. Make sure they're in good conditions. I can see the differentials. I can see here also another set of airbags. I can see another set of brake chambers. And I can also see here where my brake drums and my brake pads. Make sure they're in good condition. I can see the lights. These lights should always be clean and working properly because these are the back lights for the tractor. Then I'm going to step outside. And I'm going to start now from the trailer. Now I'm going to start my inspection for the trailer. First of all, I'm going to check the front of the trailer. Make sure it's in good condition with no holes or damage. Make sure everything is in good condition so that my load is always safe. Then I'm going to check the side of the trailer. Make sure it also has no damage. It has lights on the top and reflectors on the bottom. Make sure that they're not missing any and that they're all in good condition. Make sure the trailer is in overall good condition because this is what's going to hold my load. I'm going to check the bottom. There's these crossbars. These crossbars make up the frame of the trailer. Make sure these crossbars are in good condition and that they're not missing any because that could cause damage on the cargo or the load could fall through. So make sure they're all there. I'm going to check the landing gear. The landing gear should be well mounted to the frame of the trailer in good condition. Check the sleds, make sure that there's nothing that can fall out when I'm driving, like rocks. Gonna check this signal light. The signal light should be well mounted to the frame of the trailer also, in good condition, clean, well marked. Gonna move back slowly, also checking all the cross members, make sure they're in good condition. I'm gonna check these airlines. These airlines should not be hanging more than a foot off the ground. If they're more than a foot off the ground, it's okay, but they should never be lower than that. And they should have a good spring so that they can move back and forth whenever the tandem is moved back and forth. Here I can see these double brake chambers. I can see the push rods. When I push on the brakes, they should have no more than 2 inches of play. And if they do, I can always adjust them. I can see the brake drum and the brake pads, and the brake pad should have a minimum of 1/4 inch of life, and the brake drum should never have any oil or grease on it, because that could be dangerous. Then I'm going to come over here. Again, I'm going to check in between the tires, make sure that there's nothing inside. They should always have a good amount of space, never rubbing against each other on these tires. Again, they should have a minimum of 2/32 of an inch of life on the tread. Make sure they're in overall good condition, no cuts or damage. Make sure they're working, they're good. They should have also, again, from 95 to 100 psi of air, or whatever the manufacturer says. Make sure they're not missing any lug nuts. I'm going to check all the lug nuts, make sure they're all there. There should be no rust, because if there is, that can mean they're loose. I'm going to check the hub oil seals. I can check them through right here. If they need any oil, I can add it through right there, or any grease. I can always check right there. I'm going to check another mud flap. This is the mud flap for the trailer. Again, 4 inches off the ground. It shouldn't be any more than that, because that could be dangerous. I'm going to check the overall condition of the trailer. Check the top, the lights are working properly, and make sure this door opens and closes, and that it has its lock for whenever I'm going to drive, so that nothing can fall out. I'm going to check the lights, make sure that they're all there, well mounted, and not cracked or broken, and working properly. The license plate should match the paperwork I have inside the truck. Make sure the rear bumper is in good condition, well mounted to the back of the trailer. In here, I can see 2 single brake chambers for the last axle. I'm going to check these 2 brake chambers, since they're single, should have no more than 1 inch of play on the push rod. Make sure that they're not leaking any air from any of those hoses. I can see another set of brake drums and brake pads, and make sure they have a minimum of 1/4 of an inch of life on them. From there, I'm going to move on to the other side of the trailer. On this side, I'm going to check everything that I checked on the other side, but I'm only going to mention the things that are different. So I'm going to start off by checking the tandem release arm. This tandem release arm should always be in the lock position or the in position. If I pull this out, this tandem can move back and forth, which could be dangerous if I'm driving. So it should always be inside when I'm driving. Another thing I'm going to check that's different on this side from the other side is the landing gear handle. The landing gear handle is only on this side for this truck. So I'm going to make sure it's in a place, in a secure place, so it doesn't fall out when I'm driving, so that the sleds and the landing gear don't fall down. Make sure they're properly connected right there. Over here, I'm going to check my 5th wheel release arm. This 5th wheel release should be inside as it is right now, because if I pull it out, it will unlock the locking jaws and it can uncouple from the trailer, and that can be dangerous if the landing gear isn't down. I can also see right here the pintle hook. This hook, when it's inside like that, means that the 5th wheel is locked. But if it would be out, is because this release arm is pulled out, this will also come out. So that's another sign to make sure it's locked. Over here, I'm going to check. In this compartment, I have 3 reflective triangles. In case of an accident or an emergency, I can always bring out these 3 reflective triangles and put them out. I should also carry in here 3 fuses of every kind of fuse that I need. But this truck doesn't use fuses, it uses a circuit breaker. And the last thing I'm going to check is my fire extinguisher. This fire extinguisher has to have a minimum capacity of 10 BC, and it should always be full and ready to use. And with this, I conclude my pre-trip inspection.